Sydney Watson, the Aussie fascist who claims that the police wouldn't do anything about her sexual assault because a Muslim allegedly did it, seems to think the medical industry is profiting off of transgender people, that it's a money making racket, which is laughable. Not because I don't think the medical industry doesn't make money off of transgender people, but because the whole medical industry is a money making racket, especially here in America. I know it's different in Australia, which is why this should be an interesting perspective. But how is the medical industry profiting off of transgender people any different than any other for-profit medical care system? So let's find out. Sydney, take it away.
So yeah, we're all gonna need therapy after this.
Sydney is one of those people that I really fucking hate that she's a fascist because she's actually pretty funny. Like, the couple of videos of hers that I've watched are actually pretty cute and funny, except that she's advocating for some pretty shitty things.
Hi, my name is Sydney, welcome back to my channel. Before we launch in, yes, this video is sponsored by Surf Australian. So today I want to take a look at the idea that the medical side of the
No shilling on my channel. I am the only shiller on this channel. Please subscribe.
transgender movement is a money-making racket. And before we get started, I just want you all to bear in mind, this is a huge topic with a lot of moving parts, and there's just no way for me to cover them all in this video. So don't yell at me, because it hurts my tender feelings. You don't have any of those. With that being said, I also want to highlight this is not directed at—
So that was kind of cute and funny, but she's a piece of shit, so it sucks.
the people who transition and go on to lead happy, healthy lives. It's also not directed at—
Ooh, notice that that implied disbelief that trans people go on to live happy, healthy lives. Like, trans people can't possibly live happy, healthy lives when millions do.
at the healthcare professionals who actually do their jobs properly. For once. This is simply a look at the nefarious side of the medical complex. Spooky. So yeah, let's get this show on the road. In 1983, a man called Walt Heyer visited a leading gender specialist in San Francisco. After one appointment, the specialist told him that in order to alleviate his feelings of confusion and discomfort, Walt needed to transition to female. By his second appointment, he had a prescription for cross-sex hormones. 8 years later, Walt transitioned back to male after finding that gender reassignment did very little to alleviate his original feelings.
This is something a lot of these right-wingers will do, is they will bring up studies, or in this case, anecdotes, from the 80s, or worse, the 60s and 70s, to try to discredit modern advancements in medical theory, in trans theory. We've made a lot of discoveries, a lot of new information has come out in the last 10 to 20 years. So the fact that you have to go back to the 80s to find something to discredit transitioning is pretty telling. Yeah, I'm sure there were a lot of people who were told that they should transition and that it would help them in the 70s and 80s and 90s, who ended up detransitioning because, you know, they were misdiagnosed or that they were told something incorrect. But that doesn't change the fact that it's a valid theory with usable information now.
Just so you're aware, this is after he had the snip. Even back in the 80s, and even before that it seems, a body of medical professionals didn't seem to address underlying traumas or unresolved issues of patients before giving them hormone therapies and surgeries. And that trend and way of thinking seems to persist in some medical circles today. This is the point where I encourage you to strap in. It's about to get bumpy. In 2019, a professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University said that when it comes to transgender patients, their mental problems, often depression, discouragement, are the things that need treatment. They're going to be in the hands of doctors for the rest of their lives.
When was this?
Today. This is the point where I encourage you to strap in. It's about to get bumpy. In 2019, a professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins University said that when it comes to transgender patients, their mental problems, often depression, discouragement, are the things that need treatment. They're going to be in the hands of doctors for the rest of their lives. Many of them are going to be sterilized, not able to have their own children, and many will regret this. Can you imagine having a life where you need to seek doctors all the time for everything just to live? Getting your hormones checked, getting everything checked. That is something doctors should like to spare people of. But instead of sparing patients, more and more anecdotal accounts are indicating that doctors are very quick to prescribe hormones not only to young adults, but puberty.
Ah, yes, the singular of data, anecdote. Let me see if I can find this, let's see. Okay. So, I would just like to point out that I searched for those words, try to find this article, and every hit here, the BL, Reddit, let me see which, from Gender Critical, which no longer exists, Dancing Crabs. The BL, what is the BL? What is the BL? I've never heard of this. Looks like. What is the BL? What the? Like you. Okay. But the Blaze. It's a global research church militant. Let's see. Okay. One renowned psychiatrist at Johns Hopkins University has warned. Paul McHugh said in an interview with the College Fix. Yeah, screenshot church militant. Okay, so it looks like it's Paul McHugh. So let's look for information on Paul McHugh. Paul R. McHugh, Wikipedia. American psychiatrist and educator, researcher, university distinguished service professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins. Now the co-author of editor of 7 books in his field. Okay. Okay, so he at least has sufficiently conservative views for Bush to have appointed him to the Presidential Council on Bioethics. As what the U.S. federal government's policy regarding embryonic stem cells should be, was against using new lines of embryonic stem cells derived from in vitro fertilization, the somatic cell nuclear transfer, was another cell nucleus, cause the killing of an unborn child. Okay. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is his that he uses his ideology rather than just listening to the science. And so we'll see, so he opposes sex reassignment surgery for transgender people, shut down the gender identity clinic at Johns Hopkins, Saying another researchers found most of the people who tracked down who had undergone this type of surgery were contented with what they had done, and that only a few regretted it. In every other respect, there were little change in their psychological condition. Okay. While the 143-page review of the scientific literature on gender and sexuality in the New Atlantis, a non-peer-reviewed journal, published under the auspices of the Ethics and Public Policy Committee, a Christian-focused conservative think tank. September 2016, John Hopkins University faculty member Chris Baer, Robert W. Bloom, and Tanya C. Podiat wrote a Baltimore Sun op-ed to which 6 other Johns Hopkins faculty members also contributed, in which they indicated concerns about McHugh's co-authored report, which they said mischaracterized the current state of science on gender and sexuality. Okay. So what this tells us, in our very brief look here, is that essentially he doesn't believe it seems that he does not believe that transgender people transitioning helps. And in so doing, he appears to be, according to his colleagues at Johns Hopkins, ignoring the science on this issue. So that is the source. And again, I think it's telling that the top hits were Are Gender Critical, The Blaze, Global Research, globalresearch.ca. I don't know much about this group, but and of course Church Militant. So yeah, I think that that tells the person that they're going after. They're not going after current researchers in their field, but a retired professor who has been stated as having functionally ignored the science on this issue.
But instead of sparing patients, more and more anecdotal accounts are indicating that doctors are very quick to prescribe hormones not only to young adults, but puberty blockers to children. Puberty blockers.
Again, here we have the conflation of hormone therapy, which introduces hormones different from those you would get based on your assigned gender at birth, with puberty blockers, which specifically simply stop your body from being flooded with hormones. There's a difference. Puberty blockers, as the name implies, stop puberty from occurring. Whereas hormones, if you've already gone through puberty, can induce a second puberty, or if you haven't, then they will induce the puberty appropriate for the gender you feel.
For those of you who don't know, are drugs designed to postpone puberty in children. Self-explanatory. In the last year, we've seen an...
Notice how by saying only the truth there, she deliberately made it seem sinister what puberty blockers do. Designed to postpone puberty in children. Like, maybe I'm just being hypersensitive to her rhetoric here, but that seems like that was pretty deliberately made to make puberty blockers seem very sinister and negative, and not the actual life-saving, non-harmful medicine that they are.
Explosion in the stories of people regretting their decision to transition. And
the RT fucking documentary where they hunted down a handful of people. Yes, detransitioning is a thing, but it is a vanishingly small percentage of the number of people who transition. And a lot of them are older people who transitioned under older paradigms, which are now not recognized. Again, like the person she referenced at the beginning of the video who transitioned in the 80s.
of former transgender patients who claimed they were given hormones
Hey, Marmaro, how's it going?
without any type of proper therapy or assessment. Funnily enough, an example of this is actually Planned Parenthood, who's become the second largest provider of hormone therapy in the United States. Yikes. On their website, they clearly state, you don't need to participate in therapy or provide information from a mental health provider to receive hormone therapy. Here, they also detail how to get hormones, and at no point in the process is there a mental health evaluation, which maybe should be part of giving people life-altering drugs. I don't know. Just a suggestion. You know,
So I could be wrong here, but from what I understand, hormones are not the super life. Thank you for the follow, Marmar621. Appreciate it. From what I understand, hormones are not the permanent life altering part of transition. If you stop taking hormones, like if you're assigned male at birth and you start taking estrogen, female hormones, woman hormones, you'll grow breasts of some description. You'll stop growing facial hair to a degree. Your skin will get softer. There's a number of other things that will happen. But again, from what I understand, if at any point you stop taking those hormones, those changes will reverse. Now, again, I could be wrong. This is something I've been meaning to look into, but haven't. But so what they're doing is they're conflating the permanent step of surgical change of snip snip with the indefinite change of hormones, of taking hormones, and especially conflating all that with the very non-permanent and very non-harmful change of taking puberty blockers. Very slippery here, Sydney.
so maybe what they should be
I generally cover whatever strikes my fancy, usually pretty progressive politics, taking down conservatives and whatnot. So as I said in the beginning here, KJ, um, just about everything in the medical uh, industry, at least in America, is a money-making racket. So trying to identify transgender people specifically as a money-making racket seems like it's some sort of very specific targeting of an issue. And how important is climate change? Incredibly important. It is one of the major issues we'll face in our time. Marmar.
be giving them instead is a secure internet connection, which is why today's video is sponsored by Surfshark. Access to the internet. Private information online from hackers and weirdos. Because nothing ruins your day quite like people finding your weird cat picture collection. But what's eating Gilbert Grape? Here complaining on the internet, I'm trying to access things in my homeland. So that all being said, use code Sydney in the description and no one will see your weird cat searches. Now, interestingly, at some locations and with a parent's permission, some children can get puberty blockers through Planned Parenthood. Puberty blocker drugs, in some cases, seem fairly
The medical industry, again, at least in America, is making money off of everyone. No matter what their issue is. So saying that it's specifically an issue with the medical industry with regards to transgender people seems like a very specific agenda-driven issue. So yeah.
easy to get as well, even though they are not FDA approved for this use and have resulted in thousands and thousands of deaths and complications. Just FYI, these drugs are used for other things too, such as treating endometriosis, for example. The point is, it's not good. Now, because I'm a psychic, I know that
Wait.
some of you as well, and with a parent's permission. Risk when you try it out. So click the link in the description and no one will see your weird cat searches.
Shut up.
Now, interestingly, at some locations and with a parent's permission, some children can get puberty blockers through Planned Parenthood. Puberty blocker drugs, in some cases, seem fairly easy to get as well, even though they are not FDA approved for this use and have resulted in thousands and thousands of deaths and complications.
Hold up. Let's see. Did I put it? Yep. Okay. Okay. Let me look for puberty. So, puberty suppression. Okay, so those are the only. Well, let's take a look here. Because I'm very suspicious of her statement about puberty blockers being responsible for thousands of deaths and health issues. Let's see. Gonadotropin releasing hormone analogs has become accepted in clinical management of adolescents who have gender dysphoria. The current study is the longest term longitudinal evaluation of the effectiveness of this approach. Was alleviated and psychological functioning had steadily improved. Well-being was similar to or better than same-age young adults from the general population. Psychological functions were positively correlated with post-surgical subjective well-being. So let me see if I can find.
Fairly easy to get as well, even though they are not FDA approved for this use and have resulted in thousands and.
Let me see if I can find the drug use to halt puberty in children may cause lasting health problems. So is this? Okay. Oh, that's okay. Okay, high factual purporting and least pretty unbiased, so that's good. That's good. Let's see, this is in health. So Derek Hot 30 had no idea why her body seemed to be failing. At 21, a surgeon replaced her deteriorated jaw joint. She's been diagnosed with degenerative disc disease and fibromyalgia. She discovered a community of women online who describe similar symptoms to have one thing in common. All had taken a drug called Lupron. Chose to inject their daughters with the drug, which was approved to shut down puberty in young girls, was also commonly used off-label to help short kids grow taller. The drug's pediatric version comes with few warnings about long-term side effects. It is also used in adults to fight prostate cancer, relieve uterine pain. The FDA reflect the experiences of women who have taken Lupron. The reports describe everything from brittle bones to faulty joints. Initiated a daughter's treatment described harsh side effects that have been well documented in adults. A decade or more ago to delay puberty or grow taller, described the short-term side effects listed on the pediatric label: pain at the injection site, mood swings, and headaches. Conditions usually affect people much later in life, with osteopenia, thinning of the bones, osteoporosis, and a cracked spine. Delay puberty or grow taller. Most describe depression and anxiety. Several recounted their struggles or a daughter's suicidal urges. One mother of a Lupron patient described seizures. Some discreet which are the stroke said we're currently conducting a specific. So when was this? Okay, this is from 2017. Kids normally time puberty grow taller. Yeah, it sounds like they're using it not for the purpose of delaying puberty for transgender issues, or uh, the prescribed usage of kids with precocious puberty, but using it off label to help kids grow taller. Desires using drugs with the FDA did not determine to be safe and effective. Puberty blockers are approved for use in gender dysphoric children. Widely used off label, even though the safety of such prescribing is unproven. So, the company that now makes the drugs, Lupron safety studies were submitted to the FDA before it approved the medication for central precocious puberty in 1993. Outside of sexual characters before age 8 in girls, before 9 in boys. Uses beyond those contained in the approved label are considered unapproved uses. Federal records show the FDA official who led the drug approval process 2 decades ago was troubled by the 2 studies he reviewed. Okay. So yeah, there does appear to be some issues if it's used off label. But this is referring to people using it. Let me. Yeah, nothing in here about transgender or transitioning. So this is Sydney using a legitimate criticism of the drug to try to uh, paint a useful tool for young trans people to help them feel better about themselves as a bad thing.
Thousands of deaths and complications. Just FYI, these drugs are used for other things
Good.
too, such as treating endometriosis,
Oh,
for
hey!
example.
For once, she linked studies. My bad. Okay. Are you sure you want to leave YouTube? Yes. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, increase. Okay. Hey. Oh, YouTube. I always appreciated that you didn't do this shit. A former transgender patient has mounted an unprecedented legal challenge with sex change clinic. She claims it's putting children on a torturous, permanent, and unnecessary path. Imagine that Turf Island claiming that children are being subjected to. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Um. What? But running a clinic for transgender includes silicone penises, chest flattening binders. Just showing the born in the wrong body. Okay, so this is definitely our youngest patient is 3. I mean, I'm skeptical that a 3-year-old would know. Like, the thing is that if a 3 years old they believe that they are transgender, then they're not going to be put on puberty blockers or hormones at 3 years old. They're going to socially transition. So instead of being put in dresses with long curly hair, they'll be put in jeans with short hair, whatever they want. So this is the important thing, is that just because a 3-year-old is, you know, I don't even know how a 3-year-old would communicate that they're transgender, but if we're not putting those kids on hormones.
The point is, it's not good. Now, because I'm a psychic, I know that some of you at this point are gonna say, but Sydney, the kids can't get the things unless they have parents' consent. And Patricia, you're so right. But I just want to remind you that parents can have their children taken away if they don't let their kids access transition therapies. Some parents don't really have the option to say no. So that's fun. What's marginally worse?
Those are situations where the kids are demonstrably being harmed by not being allowed to transition through suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety. These are situations where the kids are going to, generally, I'm not saying that 100% of them are right. I know that there are definitely some instances where it's being abused, but being abused in some instances doesn't mean it's always a bad situation.
Here is that doctors have admitted they don't actually know the long-term consequences and effects of puberty blockers on a child's body. Comforting. In 2015, the National Institutes of Health awarded the Boston Children's Hospital $5.7 million to conduct the first, just want to highlight that, the first
in the U.S.
study in the US to evaluate the long-term outcomes of giving transgender youths medical treatment, predominantly hormone blockers and cross-sex hormones. Never mind that they've already been giving kids these drugs for literally years. At this point, this kind of just sounds like human experimentation just to see what happens, because who even cares, right? It's kind of like when you're 10 and you're conducting your own experiments on flies by catching them and pulling their wings off to see if they grow back. Sydney, no one does that. Yeah, well, they don't grow back. Just so you know. Now, one of the most widely prescribed puberty blockers, Lupron, however this is pronounced, recently had to update its label to indicate that it causes seizures and serious psychiatric adverse events, such as crying, irritability, impatience, anger, and aggression. Something that I personally found really disturbing here as well is how there are some hospitals and doctors who are proud of themselves for dealing with children and treating children as young as 3. I mean, for starters, a 3-year-old doesn't know what
Again, the conflation. Just because they're treating 3-year-old patients doesn't mean they're putting those 3-year-olds on puberty blockers or hormones. No one is suggesting putting kids as young as 3 on puberty blockers or hormones. It means that they're going to socially transition. They're going to, because before puberty, boys and girls are mostly the fucking same. Like, especially as far as their medical needs. For the most part, boys and girls are going to be the same when they're like 6 years old. They're going to have the same needs. They're going to have the same requirements, medically speaking. It's only once we introduce hormones that changes happen, and that's when we would need to look into it. So if someone believes that they would rather be a boy than a girl at 3 years old, let them wear boys' clothes and play with, the toys they want, if those are gendered boy toys or whatever. Kids' boy toys, not adult boy toys. Those are two totally different things. This is the conflation that I see so often in these fascists, in these right wingers, in these turf conservatives, that a child at 3 is capable of, maybe deciding that they're transgender. Okay, fine, sure. No one is saying to give them hormones. No one is putting them under the knife to change them. We know how that goes. The John Money experiment that you all love to point out was one where someone was forcibly transitioned at 3 minutes old, not 3 years old. And that didn't turn out well for either kid in the experiment.
Gender or sexes. They don't really think much of anything. They're 3. If they do think anything, it's probably like whether or not dirt has a taste and how much of it they can fit in their mouth. And obviously, more importantly, treating someone from the age of 3 means, over a lifetime, that's a lot of money. And yet, drugs that have not been properly tested or studied on healthy kids, that are not FDA approved for this use.
And here it is. No one is giving 3-year-olds puberty blockers. It's fucking pointless. Puberty blockers are, anyone giving, from my reading of the literature, my understanding, anyone giving a child, for whatever reason, whether it's gender transition, or making the kids grow taller, for any reason other than the prescribed reason of actual precocious puberty, younger than 8 or 9 years old is doing harm, is child abuse. So I don't care if a 3-year-old believes they're trans and wants to transition. Fine. No one is going to give that kid hormones. And if they do, then they are definitely abusing that kid. Like, let me state it right up here. Giving a 3-year-old hormones or puberty blockers is definitely abuse. And there are plenty of other diagnoses that people can make at 3 years old that do require expensive medical treatments that you're not up here railing against, Sydney. So why specifically picking on trans people? Is it because you find them icky? Is that the issue?
That cause emotional issues are now endorsed by the American Pediatric Association and codified by international guidelines. Well, cover me in maple syrup and call me a pancake. I don't even know what's happening. I don't want to make a joke out of this, but this is probably how we end up with real-life X-Men. What I find interesting here is that most—
Cool, yeah, I totally am in support of the future where we have real-life X-Men.
Widely cited studies conclude that most children who experience gender dysphoria or question their gender will naturally come to embrace their birth sex. In addition, some data suggests that transgender people are—
Good. Fine. Again, no one is giving 6-year-olds puberty blockers. At best, maybe they're seeing a therapist once a month or something. Like, you're failing to support your thesis that the transgender agenda or whatever is a money-making racket for the medical industry. Because you're conflating the fact that there is one patient at this one facility who's 3 years old and saying that this is common, that they're identifying 3-year-olds as transgender and chopping their dicks off and giving them hormones. No one is doing that.
Still likely to commit suicide even after receiving hormone treatment and surgeries. So, this rolls us around to my 2 main questions. If the majority of children eventually outgrow their gender dysphoria, why are we introducing them to hormonal and even sometimes surgical interventions that they otherwise wouldn't need? And if hormonal therapy—
We're not. Not for children. We're not, as far as I'm aware, there's no surgery for people under 18 for transition. There's no transitional surgery for people under 18, I suppose, except in exceptional cases. Like, there's exceptions for everything, but it's not the norm or a standard procedure or recommended for surgery for anyone under 18. And the reason why we give puberty blockers and hormones to pubescent children is because studies have shown that, particularly with kids with gender dysphoria, forcing them to go through the wrong uh, puberty is incredibly harmful for them psychologically. You can make all the noise you want about kids transitioning and being dumb or whatever, but no one is medically intervening in trans kids who are prepubescent. It's not happening. They wait for puberty to start to show signs of puberty, and then they put them on puberty blockers. And then a few years later, if you are still dysphoric and still want to change, then they can start the hormone therapy once they're like 12 or 13 or so.
And surgical interventions don't necessarily alleviate negative feelings in some adults, then why are they more than likely the first option? Because money. As far as money making goes, the medical industry, particularly in America, is enormous. And when it comes to being transgender, a lifetime of hormone treatment, surgeries, therapy, and other treatments can add up real fast. Now, remember how I mentioned Planned Parenthood? Yeah, well, when the company's revenue took a dive with fewer women accessing abortion services by 2016, they expanded into the transgender market. In documents, they said that their goal is to diversify their revenue base. And diversify they did. Based on how many donors and sponsors they have too, I'd also guess that they're getting kickbacks from referring patients to doctors and so on. I'm speculating, of course, but it wouldn't shock me. To be quite honest, nothing shocks me anymore. What can I say? I'm all out of shocks. No shocks given. Okay, thank you, we get it. Now remember how I also mentioned the puberty blocker Lupron? Well, the companies who manufacture it, Abbott Laboratories and Takeda Chemicals, paid almost $200 million to the Department of Justice for giving doctors illegal kickbacks in exchange for prescribing Lupron to patients. Good stuff. Now, although
That's not unique to Abbott. Every fucking medical company does that. Again, you're failing to demonstrate that this is something unique to the transgender industry. The transitioning company, whatever you want to call it.
Though this happened in 2001 and Lupron does have several other uses, it's not to say that Big Pharma isn't currently operating like this. After all, there is a history of big pharmaceutical companies giving doctors kickbacks for pushing particular drugs. In addition, the cost of Lupron is anywhere from $775 a month, and that over the course of a few years can add up real quick. In fact, in 2017, the drug sales equaled $669 million in the United States alone, a $16 million increase from 2 years earlier. And with rates of children identifying as transgender currently skyrocketing across the world, there's a bit of money to be made here. So in conclusion, put a fork in me. I'm done. Now, unsurprisingly, this demand has been met with more and more gender youth clinics. In fact, the first opened up in 2007 by Boston's Children's Hospital and has since been joined by over 40 others nationwide. But this explosion is also happening for adults.
Yes, in America, the medical system is a fucking capital. It's capitalism. What do you want? As the studies have gotten better and more people have as we've gotten better and more accepting of better at identifying trans kids and more accepting of transness as a thing, more people are transitioning. More people are coming out as transgender. This is a good thing. So, but of course, you think trans people are icky, so whatever.
As well. In a 14-year span, one study found that gender-affirming surgeries increased by 4-fold. By 2016, this allegedly increased again by 19%. And seeking this sort of surgery isn't cheap, with a huge portion of people paying out of pocket. Over the past decade, medical infrastructure to support and treat transgender people has proliferated, and a lot of hospitals and doctors have seized the opportunity to be the frontrunners in the industry, opening specialized wings, clinics, and training doctors to do specific surgeries. And here, I want to remind you, this is to accommodate 0.6% of the population. Yes, just over 0.5%. Can't quite work out how to cure cancer or anything like that, but kid, we gotcha. We can stop your puberty. Honestly, I think
that's because curing cancer is an incredibly complex and difficult thing because there's a billion different kinds of cancer, but gender transition is relatively simple and easy to do. Holy shit.
the reason why this is happening is also reasonably simple too. People like Jazz Jennings, Caitlyn Jenner, and other celebrities have made it look fun and easy when the truth is, transitioning is an incredibly hard road, and most people who decide to traverse it don't have the enormous bank account of someone like Caitlyn Jenner. If you go on crowdfunding websites, you quickly learn how many people are scraping together their pennies just to fund their transitions. It's not nice. To compound this, education bodies have started integrating transgender theory into classrooms, telling kids that their sex is malleable and fluid. Personally, I think this is a little weird to do for 0.5% of the population. But I guess weirder things have happened. Further than that, we now have a third option on birth certificates and driver's licenses. Most websites list a third option when you're identifying your sex.
Yeah.
We are given instruction on how to use gender-neutral language or inclusive language. So if you've now taught an entire generation of young people and children that sex can be changed, glamorized it in the media and in pop culture, and taught people that
where is it glamorized in media and pop culture? I mean, I absorb a lot of progressive and left-wing media, and while on social media there's a lot of, you know, trans empowerment and what have you, it's not Sydney, why you gotta lie? Just because it's become more acceptable as more people come out and the science dictates that it's more acceptable, then that's a problem you're going to have to adapt to. Because science marches on and reality agrees with us.
Two sexes, it's very unsurprising to me that there would in fact be an explosion in people seeking out transgender medical therapies and treatment. Then you factor in the cost of surgeries and other things like laser hair removal, voice therapy, and so on, and you're looking at an exorbitant amount of money. No matter which way you want to slice it and dice it, being transgender is a lifelong cost. And you can bet your bottom dollar that big pharma and the medical industry are making bank as a result. I know this, of course, because I am a wizard. Now, obviously, I've only touched on a fraction of this topic, and there are so many other factors.
Okay, yeah. She's trying to say that because medical practice has grown to fill the need as transgender people become more open and accepting and transition becomes more acceptable, that this is somehow proof of a conspiracy among medical people to just make more money. They're just responding to a need. I'm not saying they're not jacking up prices or doing other things to make money, but trying to claim that they're proliferating transgender ideology and transitioning just to make money is absurd and anti-science. Fuck this. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to like, share, and leave a comment because it helps me. Subscribe and ring that bell to help you. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.